Emily moved across the dance floor, her white gown flowing around her like a dream. Music filled the hall, and guests clapped to the beat while Daniel twirled her around, laughing. The sweet smell of wine and flowers hung in the air, and for a moment, Emily thought life could not be more perfect. She was 27, newly married, and surrounded by family and friends. At last, she felt she belonged to something bigger than herself, a new home, a new family. When the music slowed, she stepped aside to catch her breath. That was when Richard, Daniel's father, walked up to her. His smile was tight, his eyes sharp. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that made him look even more powerful than he already was. Everyone in the room respected him, maybe even feared him. Emily had always tried her best to be polite, to win his approval. "Emily," he said softly, though there was no warmth in his tone. "A word, please." She followed him out of the hall and into a quiet corner. The noise of laughter and clinking glasses faded, leaving only the heavy sound of her heartbeat. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out a neat folder. He opened it with care, then pushed it toward her. "These are some documents that need your signature," he said firmly. "It's nothing unusual, just tradition in this family. Every new bride does it. It's for the security of your marriage." Emily frowned, taking the papers in her hand. She skimmed the first page, and her stomach dropped. The documents were written to transfer ownership of her family house and inheritance into Daniel's name. The very house her late father had left behind, the one her mother had struggled so hard to protect. She looked up at Richard in disbelief. "You want me to give my house to Daniel?" Richard's eyes narrowed, and his smile returned colder than before. "Not give, my dear. Share. It is better this way. You are part of us now, and in this family, we keep everything under one name. Daniel's name." Emily's hands trembled slightly as she held the papers. "But that house, it's all I have left of my father. My mother still lives there." Richard cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Sentiment has no place in marriage. Security does. Think of it as a step toward loyalty. Do this, and you will show everyone you belong to us fully." Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to run, but her feet felt heavy. Just an hour ago, she had been dancing, believing she was gaining love and family. Now here she was cornered and pressured on the happiest day of her life. She forced a small smile, trying to mask her shock, but it barely reached her lips. Richard's stare told her everything. This was not a request, it was an order. In that moment, Emily's joy slipped away. The music and laughter inside felt far, far away. She realized with painful clarity that the family she had just married into was not what it seemed. The celebration was only a mask, hiding control and power. Her smile faded completely as she folded the papers, her heart sinking. This was not the beginning she had dreamed of. It was the first warning. Grew up middle class, Emily's life was never one of luxury, but it was filled with love and sacrifice. Her father had died when she was still very young, leaving only faint memories of his laughter and the way he used to carry her on his shoulders. After his death, her mother became both parents at once. She worked long hours, sometimes taking 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Life was not easy, but Emily never doubted she was loved. The family house became the center of everything. It was not large or fancy, but it carried memories that money could never buy. It was where Emily took her first steps, where her mother taught her how to bake, and where they celebrated birthdays even with little more than a homemade cake. Her mother often said, "This house is your father's gift to us. No matter what happens, it's ours." To Emily, the house was more than brick and wood. It was a piece of her father she still held on to. Her mother gave up many of her own dreams to ensure Emily had a chance at a better life. She made sure Emily went to good schools, dressed neatly, and never felt less than anyone else. Sometimes Emily overheard neighbors whispering about how hard her mother worked, but she never let pride stop her. That spirit of strength shaped Emily into a woman who valued love and effort over wealth. Years later, when Emily met Daniel at work, she thought she had finally found someone who shared her heart. Daniel was warm, funny, and easy to be around. He made her laugh during long office hours, and he listened when she spoke about her dreams. But even in those early days, Emily noticed how Daniel often looked over his shoulder, as if seeking someone's approval. That someone was his father, Richard. Richard was a man who filled every room he walked into. Wealthy and respected, He ran not only his business but also his household with an iron hand. Daniel, though charming, often shrank under his father's shadow. He wanted to be seen as strong, but he had spent his whole life trying, and often failing, to meet Richard's standards. Still, Emily believed in him. She believed that together, they could build something of their own, something separate from Richard's world. When Daniel asked her to marry him, she said yes without hesitation. She thought she was gaining not only a husband, but also a family that would embrace her. For a time, she allowed herself to dream of a future where love was enough to overcome any difference. But marriage opened Emily's eyes to a truth she had not wanted to see. The family she had married into was not like hers. They did not value sacrifice or sentiment. They valued control, power, and wealth. Richard's words carried more weight in the household than anyone else's, and even Daniel often gave in to him without question. To Richard, Emily was not just his son's wife, she was an outsider. He never said it directly, but his actions spoke clearly. He looked at her as though she was someone who had taken more than she deserved. He questioned her choices, her background, even the way she spoke sometimes. And above all, he never forgot that she still had something that was not under his control: her inheritance and the family house. Richard believed everything should belong under his son's name. To him, there was no such thing as Emily's property or Emily's life. It all had to be folded into what he called the family legacy. He often spoke of it as though it were a business deal, not a marriage. Emily tried to ignore the unease at first. She wanted to believe Daniel loved her for who she was, not for what she could bring. And Daniel did love her in his way. But he was weak when it came to his father. He wanted peace more than he wanted fairness, and Emily could feel it pulling at their bond. Now, standing in her new life as a wife, Emily found herself torn in two directions. On one side was her loyalty to Daniel, the man she had promised to stand by, the man she had chosen. On the other side was the deep unease Richard planted in her heart, especially with his demand that she sign away her inheritance. The thought of losing her family house, the one thing her mother had held on to for decades, made Emily's stomach twist. She remembered her father's words, passed through her mother. "This house is your father's gift. How could she give it away, even to her husband, just to please a man who had never accepted her?" She wanted to believe in her marriage. She wanted to believe in Daniel. But more and more, she felt like she was being asked to prove herself, to trade her past and her identity for the approval of a man who would never see her as enough. It was not just about property anymore. It was about respect, about whether she had a place in this family as herself, or only as someone molded to fit Richard's control. And in her heart, Emily knew the battle ahead was not just for her inheritance. It was for her dignity, her independence, and the memory of the father who had given her everything he could. Emily refuses to sign. She looked Richard straight in the eyes and shook her head. "I can't do this. My father left that house for my mother and me. It's not just property, it's part of my family. It belongs to me, and it's not up for discussion." For a moment, Richard was silent. His face darkened, his jaw tightened. Then his voice rose, sharp and cold. "Ungrateful girl. Do you even understand what family means? You dare to bring your small inheritance here, and treat it like it's more important than my son? Daniel has married beneath him. I warned him." The words hit Emily like a slap. Her cheeks burned, but she refused to look away. She wanted to answer back, but Daniel stepped between them. His voice was softer, but his words cut her all the same. "Emily, maybe you should just sign it. It's not worth all this fighting. Let's just keep the peace." Emily turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Daniel, it's my father's house. How can you even ask me to give it away like that? Don't you see what this really is?" Daniel avoided her gaze. He rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. "Please, Emily. My father won't let this go. If you love me, prove it by making things easier. Just sign, and we can move on." Her heart sank. She had expected Richard's anger, but not Daniel's weakness. The man who had once promised to protect her was now asking her to surrender the one thing she swore never to lose. From that day, nothing was the same. Richard's dislike for her became open war. At family dinners, he no longer tried to hide it. He made small, sharp comments, cutting her down in front of everyone. If she spoke, he interrupted. If she smiled, he mocked. "Careful," he would say. "Emily doesn't like to share." She clings to what isn't worth much. His words spread through the family like poison. Soon, whispers followed her everywhere. She's greedy, Richard told anyone who would listen. She doesn't want to build with us. She just wants to keep her little things separate. Even people who had once been friendly began to treat her with coolness, their smiles fading when she entered the room. The house that once felt like a new beginning now felt like a cage. Emily sat through silent meals where no one spoke to her. She endured gatherings where Richard's voice dominated and hers was ignored. She felt smaller and smaller, as though she were being erased. Daniel did little to help. At first, he tried to smooth things over, telling her, "It's just how my father is. Don't take it personally." But soon even that stopped. He began to avoid the subject, to avoid her. He stayed longer at work, spent more time with his family without inviting her. And when she asked him about it, he snapped. "Why do you have to make everything so hard? My father is only thinking about our future. Can't you just let it go?" The distance between them grew like a crack in glass, spreading wider with every day. Emily found herself alone in a marriage that was supposed to be her safe place. The man she loved seemed more worried about pleasing his father than protecting his wife. One evening, after another tense dinner, Emily sat in the quiet of her bedroom, staring at the walls. The papers Richard had given her still lay in the drawer, unsigned. She touched them with trembling fingers, but she knew she would never give in. It was not just about the house anymore. It was about respect, about her father's memory, about herself. Richard thought he could control her, but she knew signing those papers would mean losing more than property. It would mean losing her dignity, her identity. She whispered to herself, "I'm not just fighting for a house. I'm fighting for me." And for the first time since her wedding day, she realized the true battle had only just begun. Richard manipulates Daniel further, planting poison in his son's mind. He would lean close during private talks and whisper, "Emily doesn't love you the way you think. Women like her, they only care about themselves. One day she will leave you, and she'll take everything with her." At first, Daniel shook his head. "No, father. Emily isn't like that." But Richard's voice carried weight, and his words repeated themselves in Daniel's mind like an echo he could not silence. Slowly, doubt began to creep in. He started to wonder, what if my father is right? Soon, Daniel began to act differently. He asked Emily small questions about her bank account, her inheritance, even the money she earned from work. He tried to sound casual, but Emily noticed the sudden interest. One night, when she left her phone on the table, she returned to see Daniel scrolling through her messages. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp with shock. Daniel's face flushed. I needed to check. I want to know we're secure. I need to be sure you're not hiding anything." Emily's heart ached. "Hiding? From you? Daniel, I've given you everything. Why don't you trust me?" But Daniel looked away, unable to answer. As if Daniel's suspicion wasn't enough, Richard raised the stakes. A week later, Emily received an official-looking envelope. Inside were legal letters, full of heavy words and threats. They demanded she reconsider transferring her property, warning of complications if she refused. She read the lines with trembling hands, her chest tight. Richard was using lawyers to scare her. When she showed the letter to Daniel, hoping he would defend her, he only sighed. "Emily, maybe this is for the best. If you just sign, all this pressure will end. Don't you see he won't stop until you do?" Emily felt her throat tighten with anger. "So you want me to give up my father's house just to make him happy? What about me, Daniel? Don't I matter?" The arguments became frequent. Small disagreements turned into long fights that left the house cold and silent. Emily began to see something she had tried to ignore before. Her husband wasn't just weak, he was becoming part of the problem. By staying silent, by pressing her to give in, he was standing with his father, not with her. Feeling trapped, Emily turned to the one person who had always given her honest advice, her mother. One evening, she visited the family house and sat at the kitchen table, the smell of her mother's cooking wrapping her like comfort. Her mother listened quietly as Emily poured out her pain. The pressure, the arguments, the constant humiliation. At last, her mother sighed and reached for her daughter's hand. "My child," she said softly, "love is not blind obedience. Love without respect is a prison. A man who allows his father to control him will one day allow his father to control you. You must ask yourself if this is the life you want. Emily's eyes filled with tears. But I love him, Mama. I don't want to give up on us. Her mother squeezed her hand. Loving someone should not mean losing yourself. Hold on to who you are. If you give that away, there will be nothing left for you. Those words stayed with Emily, giving her strength. But Richard was not done. One Sunday afternoon, Richard called for a family meeting. Everyone gathered in the living room. Daniel, his siblings, their spouses. Emily sat quietly, already feeling the tension in the air. Richard stood in the center, his voice booming like a judge passing sentence. "We are here today," he announced, "because there is a matter of loyalty to be addressed. Emily refuses to join this family fully. She clings to her old life, her father's small inheritance, as if it is more important than her husband and his future. Tell me, what kind of wife behaves this way?" Murmurs spread around the room. Emily felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, some pitying, others accusing. Her face burned, but she forced herself to stand. "You talk about loyalty," she said, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger. "But what you want is control. My father worked hard for that house. My mother gave her life to protect it. And you think I should hand it over to you, like a gift? No. I will not." Richard's eyes narrowed and he sneered. "Ungrateful girl. You shame my son. You shame this family." Emily's hands clenched into fists. Her heart raced, but her voice rang clear. "No, Richard. It is you who shames this family. A true leader protects, he does not destroy. You may control Daniel, but you will never control me." Gasps filled the room. Daniel looked stunned, but he did not rise to defend her. That silence hurt Emily more than Richard's words. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She lifted her chin, turned on her heel, and walked out. Her steps were heavy but steady, each one carrying her away from the trap they had tried to build around her. As the door closed behind her, Emily whispered under her breath, "I won't be broken." And for the first time in weeks, she felt a small flame of strength burning inside her. A reminder that she was still her father's daughter, still her mother's child, and still her own woman, no matter how hard they tried to take that away. Emily quietly gathers proof of Richard's manipulations and legal intimidation. She kept every letter the lawyers had sent her, neatly folded in a small folder she hid inside her wardrobe. Each one carried Richard's shadow, his attempt to scare her into giving up her father's house. But Emily didn't stop there. She began asking questions, speaking to people who had worked with Richard before. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to form. Richard, the man who acted like a king in his home, was not as powerful as he wanted everyone to believe. His company was drowning in debt. He had been borrowing money secretly, moving funds around to hide the cracks. His empire was not strong. It was weak, ready to collapse. Emily realized with shock that his demand for her property was not about tradition at all. He wanted control of her inheritance because he needed it. He was desperate. Emily held on to this truth, waiting for the right time. That moment came one evening during another family gathering. Everyone was there, Daniel, his siblings, their spouses, and Richard at the head of the table, his presence as heavy as ever. The meal was tense, no laughter, no joy. Halfway through, Richard pushed his glass aside and cleared his throat. "Emily," he said firmly, his eyes sharp, "we will not keep going in circles. It is time you sign the papers. You have delayed long enough. This family cannot move forward while you hold back what belongs to us." The room grew quiet. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands tightening on his fork. Emily's heart raced, but she stood slowly, her folder clutched against her chest. She looked Richard in the eye. "No, Richard. Tonight it is time for the truth." Murmurs spread across the table. Richard frowned. "What nonsense are you speaking?" Emily opened the folder and pulled out the letters, laying them on the table for everyone to see. "These are the letters your lawyers sent me. You tried to bully me into giving up my inheritance. You told everyone I was greedy, but all along you were the one trying to take what wasn't yours." Richard's face turned red, but Emily wasn't finished. She pulled out another document, one she had gathered from someone who once worked in his company. "And here is the proof of your debts. You pretend to be strong, but your empire is cracking. You needed my father's house to cover your mess. Tell me who is greedy now. The room froze. Gasps echoed around the table. Daniel's fork clattered to the floor. His eyes darted from the papers to his father, confusion and betrayal written across his face. Father, is this true? Richard slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising like thunder. Lies. All lies. She is twisting everything to make me look weak. But the silence that followed told him no one believed him completely. His children, who had always trusted his word, looked uncertain. His power was slipping in front of their eyes. Daniel rose to his feet, his voice shaking. All this time, I thought Emily was against me. I thought she was hiding something. But it was you, Father. You've been hiding everything. You let me doubt my wife for nothing. Richard turned on Daniel, his anger burning. Foolish boy. Do not let her poison you. She is nothing without us. Emily's voice cut through the room, steady and strong. I am not nothing. I am my father's daughter. I am a woman who knows her worth. You cannot take that from me. For the first time, Richard's voice faltered. His eyes, once blazing with control, flickered with something else, fear. He opened his mouth to shout again, but the weight of everyone's stares silenced him. The power in the room had shifted. It no longer sat in Richard's hands. It rested with Emily, the woman he had tried to break. Daniel sank back into his chair, his face pale, his world shattered. The man he had worshipped as invincible was now exposed, small beneath the truth. He looked at Emily, his voice barely a whisper. You were protecting yourself, and me. I see that now. Richard, furious and humiliated, spat out bitter words. You will regret this, Emily. You will regret crossing me. But Emily stood tall, her chin lifted. No, Richard. The only one who should regret anything is you. You tried to destroy me, and instead you destroyed yourself. The room remained silent. No one dared speak. Richard's pride lay broken, his authority cracked open for everyone to see. And Emily, once the outsider, stood unbroken in the center of it all, stronger than he had ever imagined. Emily decides she won't let her life be dictated by fear. For too long, she had lived under Richard's shadow, bending under his pressure and waiting for Daniel to defend her. But now, after everything, she understood one thing clearly. If she wanted peace, she had to take it for herself. The very next week, Emily packed a small suitcase and moved out of Daniel's house. She found a simple apartment closer to her workplace. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. The first night alone was quiet, almost too quiet, yet she felt something she hadn't felt in months: freedom. She could breathe again without waiting for criticism, without fearing Richard's voice echoing through her home. She threw herself into her work, spending long hours at the office and proving her worth. Her confidence began to return. Slowly, her colleagues noticed the change. She smiled more, carried herself taller, and spoke with certainty. She was no longer the timid bride who second-guessed every step. Meanwhile, Daniel struggled. Torn between his loyalty to his father and his love for Emily, he found himself lost. At family dinners, Richard continued to complain about Emily, calling her ungrateful and stubborn. But the more Daniel listened, the more hollow those words sounded. He couldn't shake the memory of Emily's courage the night she exposed the truth. For the first time in his life, he began to see his father not as a strong leader, but as a man desperate to control everyone around him. Still, rebuilding trust with Emily was not simple. When Daniel called, she often kept the conversations short. When he asked to visit, she hesitated. I need time, she told him. You stood by and let your father tear me down. You believed him over me. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day. Those words cut Daniel deeply, but they were honest. Emily, on her part, wasn't waiting around. She hired a lawyer and filed for legal protection of her inheritance and her family house. She made sure every document was clear. The property belonged solely to her. No one, not even her husband, could take it away without her consent. For the first time, she felt truly secure, knowing Richard's reach could not touch what her father had left behind. Each step she took made her stronger. She decorated her new apartment with small things that made her smile. Fresh flowers, books, a framed picture of her parents. She cooked meals for herself, sometimes inviting her mother over to share dinner. They would sit together, laughing softly, and her mother would say, "This is the daughter I raised, strong, proud, unafraid." Emily realized she no longer needed to beg for acceptance. She had everything she needed inside her. Weeks passed, and people began to see her differently. Even Richard's harsh whispers about her lost their power. The woman he had tried to shame was no longer meek and silent. She was standing tall, showing the world she knew her worth. When Daniel came to visit her one evening, he found a changed woman. She opened the door not with bitterness, but with calm strength. He looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. "Emily," he said softly, "I don't know if I can undo the damage, but I want to try. I don't want to lose you." Emily listened quietly. She didn't rush to forgive him, but she didn't turn him away either. She was no longer desperate for love or approval. She was whole on her own. For the first time since her wedding day, Emily felt peace. She had walked through betrayal, humiliation, and control, but she had come out on the other side, stronger, wiser, unbroken. She was no longer the meek bride who bent her head in silence. She was Emily, her father's daughter, a woman who carried her own strength, and no one, not Richard, not even Daniel, could take that away from her again. Months later, Emily visits her mother at the family house she fought so hard to protect. The air smelled of the garden roses her father once planted, and the walls still carried the laughter of her childhood. Sitting at the kitchen table, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. This house was more than bricks and wood. It was a piece of her father's love, and she had kept it safe. As she sipped tea with her mother, the sound of the postman came at the gate. Her mother returned with a small envelope and placed it in Emily's hand. The handwriting on the front made her pause. It was Daniel's. Emily opened it slowly and read the words carefully. In the letter, Daniel apologized. He admitted he had been weak, too afraid to stand up to his father. He confessed he had let her down and asked for another chance. He wrote that he missed her, that he still loved her, and that he wanted to rebuild what they once had. Emily's eyes moved over the words, but her heart remained steady. She folded the letter and placed it gently on the table. For a long moment, she stared out the window at the garden, watching the breeze move through the trees. Her mother said nothing, only watched her daughter with quiet pride. Emily didn't speak of whether she would forgive Daniel or not. That choice remained hers to make. What mattered most was the peace she felt inside. She was no longer broken, no longer afraid. She had faced the storm and found her strength. Emily took a deep breath, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She whispered to herself, "I didn't lose a family. I found myself." Hi loves, thanks so much for staying till the end. Two hearts. Don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit that subscribe button for more stories. See you next time. Sparkles.